Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode 6 of Cast to the Future. My name is Curtis. I'll be your host today and the declaration judge of today's episode. We got Danny returning as one of our judges. We got Jeremy returning as one of our judges. We have a newcomer. We have Anne as one of our debaters. We have Hunter returning. He's also a debater today. We have a newcomer, Jack, who's going to be one of our debaters. And we have Jessica returning as one of our judges. The movie we're going to be, which is to be today's topic, is the 1950 noir classic Sunset Boulevard. Of course, Sunset Boulevard focuses on a penniless and struggling writer named Joe Gillis, who is down on his luck. He's trying to find some work, and he just on one event he just stumbles across an actress of the silent era named Norma Desmond, gloriously played by Gloria Swanson, and she kind of takes Joe into her home and kind of forces him to write a new picture for her to star in. And at the same time, Joe gets a little bit friendly with a screenplay reader, office worker at a studio named Betty Schrafer, who wants to be a writer, and they together work on a script together, and this causes Norma to grow jealous as Norma has grown a kind of obsessive affection with Joe. And of course, a lot of dramatic tragedies ensue. So we're going to go around and just share our quick thoughts on the film as quick as possible. I'm going to go first. I saw Sunset Boulevard the first time I was in high school and like a film studies elective. And I remember the first time watching in high school, I was really drawn to it. I was really drawn to the atmosphere of the film, the characters. I thought the story was really intriguing. I didn't see it for a long time until this past week to prepare for this episode.
Oh, yeah.
And
all right, I gotta run for a second, Curtis. I'll be back. Okay.
Oh yeah, I gotta go. Yeah, do your thing. And I just after watching it recently, all those thoughts came back to my mind. This film is really, it's a lot of people go see it as really melodramatic and over the top, especially with Gloria's performance as Norma Desmond. But that's just all to her character. You got to remember, this character is an actress from the silent era, and she's obsessed with giving out a performance in everything she does and everything she says, and she's expressive with everything. So I just love the intensity of the film. I love the atmosphere of the film. I love the story, and I love that Joe is conflicted of, working with Norma, of getting this script done because he just wants something to do, but at the same time he shows an affection for this Betty character, and they have a chemistry together, and they want to write a script together, and you can see how he's drawn to that and how he's conflicted in doing both things and what ends up happening in the end. So Sunset Boulevard, it's simply a classic, plain and simple. So Danny, what are your thoughts on the film?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a masterpiece. It's one of the greatest films ever made. Like, that kind of goes without saying. The writing is so perfect. Not just like in terms of structure, but just line for line. Just the little way, no one could write like Billy Wilder. And I know he didn't write this alone, but just the way it comments on Hollywood is fascinating, and how some of it holds up, some of it's different. Gloria Swanson is, that's one of the greatest performances. I can't speak about this movie without just going into hyperbole. So yeah, I guess it's pretty good.
How about you, Anne? What are your thoughts on Sunset Boulevard?
Forgot I muted. Has to happen every time, huh? No, I love the look and the feel of the film. I really love good noir style. almost like a detective. It almost feels like a detective kind of novel, the way it's approached. But my only problem with this movie is, and this is like everything from that genre, it's overacted like hell, and that bugs the hell out of me because it's such a disingenuous performance. But that's just the way it was done, because people were fresh off of silent films still, and even if 20, 30 years down the line, and stay like, it's just the way acting is developed over the years. But yeah, no, I really enjoy the film. I've seen it several times.
Okay, how about you, Jeremy? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I just don't get it because like not a 100%. I thought it would take place on Sunset Boulevard like 100% of the time, and sometimes they leave Sunset Boulevard, so it should be
Mostly,
like Sunset Boulevard
technically.
and other places. So like at first I was so confused, and then I was like, wow, this world is so lonely and romantic, and that's what this movie's about: loneliness and romantic loneliness. Yeah, I really liked it. I watched it in school, and my professor loved Billy Wilder, so we studied him, and he was really like one of the genius parts is like telling you that Joe dies in the beginning, so that at the end you're not frustrated. Like in that one movie that I can't say, but I threw a chair after I watched this other movie because of something that, well, I guess they couldn't have told. I don't know. Anyways, it's a 10 film. It's a 10 film.
Nice. How about you, Hunter?
I lived on Sunset Boulevard for about a year. Don't recommend it, but the film is fantastic. A classic through and through. Great historical time capsule that shows you where Hollywood was at the time. Like today we look at it as a historical piece, but for its time it was very contemporary and itself nostalgic for the past. And now it's interesting the way we look at it. Being nostalgic for the period in which they were nostalgic. And yeah, it's a great, complicated script that better than a lot of dramas that I think we get today that explores not just nostalgia, but, aging and toxicity, codependency. And I got to disagree with some of my fellow commentators. I think that Gloria Swanson's performance, especially compared to everyone else who's sort of playing it more straight, a little understated, she fits that role because she is meant to be eccentric in the same way that Joe himself in the film, I think, comments on it. Like, she is over the top. And that is, I don't know if that was stunt casting or if that was a specific choice by Miss Swanson, but I think her performance still holds up today in 2020 for me.
And finally, Jessica.
I remember seeing this film for the first time when I was in college. It was part of a film class that we were watching where we watched a couple different classics and modern classic films. It was always one that I really enjoyed because it did kind of give off the feel that it was a noir type of film, which I found interesting. I thought the character of Norma was super interesting, even though she was a little bizarre and weird. Like, it made me want to get to know her more. And as far as like how over the top she was, I feel like that is a comment on the transition that actors and actresses, the difficult transition they had going from silent films to talkies. And even if you compare, not even just silent films, but even films between like the 20s and the 50s compared to how acting is done now, it's very different. And it's because it was begat from stage acting, and you have to have these big movements and these big moments when you're acting because you have to reach the furthest seat away from the stage and make it so that way they can still feel your performance. Whereas how acting's done now, it is much more subtle because your camera, your audience is right there in front of your face. And sometimes people could not make that transition. So I felt like it was an honestly kind of interesting little historical take on how some performers had to kind of overcome that obstacle, and some that couldn't, what effect that it did have on them. So I found it very interesting, and I do love the film.
All right. But as with every Cast in the Future episode, we're going to pretend that Sunset Boulevard did not come out 70 years ago, as this past week the movie actually celebrated its 70th anniversary. We're going to pretend it can't come out in August of 1950, and we're going to pretend that the movie was just being made today in 2020, and what stars would star in it, and what director would direct it. So we're going to cast about 4 characters today and choose our director. We're going to recast, of course, Betty Schrafer, Max, Joe, Norma Desmond, of course, and then choose our director. And that's how the format of the show is going to go. So if we're all ready, we're going to cast to the future. Now, the first character we are going to start with is the character of Betty Schrafer, of course. And this character is one that meets Joe early on in the film. And she initially doesn't like the script that she turns into the studio called Bases Loaded. She's very critical of Joe's writing. And she's used to it because she works as a screenplay reader in the studio. And she reads a lot of scripts. She knows all the cliches. She knows all the story beats. And then she befriends Joe a little bit, and they begin working on a script together. And then they kind of form a little secret romance together, even though she's engaged to somebody else. And this character was, of course, played by Nancy Olson in the 1950 film, but we're going to recast Betty Schrafer for the 2020 version. But our version of the film will still take place around the late 40s, early 50s. So, Anne, who is your choice for Betty?
I have a very specific vision of this film, and because it is kind of like, it takes place, a while back, just kind of at a period of time where there's like this constant evolution in filmmaking, and it is a reflection of that. I kind of see Betty as the actress itself and that character almost like a starlet-like quality, even though she's a writer, very serious, but I feel like that's the feel and look that we need. And, very young, fresh face. And that's why I kind of like want to see like Chloe Grace Moretz in it, because she is an excellent actress. She's proven with dramatic and proven with comedic. So she's great timing. And I just think she would be a really good fit for what I would like to see in this kind of film.
How about you, Hunter? Who is your Betty?
For me, I gotta go with Miss Daisy Ridley. I think Betty's role in the film is she's very much there to shake Joe out of his funk, and she brings this bright-eyed optimism because she's not yet disillusioned by screenwriting like he is. And I think Daisy not only brings that youthfulness and that energy, but she also carries just the strength. I mean, she literally just carried a huge franchise. So, I think she knocked this role out of the park.
Okay. Well, since Jack's not here at the moment, we'll just go ahead and get into the debate. So, Hunter, and debate your choices.
I mean, I really, because what I see, this is one of those kind of films that are very meta. And it's just, I don't even know how to explain it, but I just kind of see her, she's that cherubic, fresh face girl that's kind of like the refreshing part of the film. Yeah, I know I'm bad at this.
No, I don't disagree with you on that, but I gotta say, I think that Chloe, cherub is definitely a good word for it, because I still, she's a young woman now, but she's still barely older than a child, where I think that Betty does bring this kind of youthful like optimism to the role. She does still have this like world weariness in that she comes from the world of film. She's very aware of it, and she doesn't play any fool to Joe Gillis. And that's why I think someone maybe not just a little older, but someone that seems a little more mature like Daisy play that. I mean, I see her role in this film not dissimilar to how Daisy plays Rey in The Force Awakens, where she is not only this breath of fresh air for a lot of these old curmudgeons like Han Solo, but she is the new hope moving forward for these people, where she can take what they've done before and elevate it and advance it. I think that,
did you just put a Star Wars reference?
Yeah. Well, Daisy, she was in Star Wars, so she, I think that her role as Rey definitely shows that she could play Betty Schaefer, because they're in a lot of ways they have similar roles in their respective story.
Well, and that's why I kind of stayed away from one of the bigger tickets too, because I think I want the focus not on like a established chain actress, something like Star Wars, because I don't want people going into a film going, oh my God, it's Rey, I fucking love Rey. And I just, something with like Chloe, I think there's a subtleness to her. And, she is not as young as we think she is, or she still seems, but I think with a role like this, you'd really be able to see her mature and come into her own as playing adult roles.
True. I just got a notice from Curtis. I'm going to put on some headphones because I think I'm getting some reverb from me. I hear what you're saying, but I think that Chloe, she's even more established than Daisy Ridley. So if anything, she's the more recognizable actor. She's been in everything from Kick-Ass to Hugo to she was Carrie, and now she'll be the Little Mermaid as well. Whereas Daisy's only had one major sort of role, and beyond that has done a lot of like indie stuff. So I think too she can bring the more subtle acting, where I really see that Chloe fits more into the bigger Hollywood stuff. For a more subtle drama like this, I think that Star Wars is more of an outlier for someone like Daisy Ridley, and for the most part, what we're going to see out of her career is something along the lines of Sunset Boulevard, or her film from a couple years ago, Ophelia, which was like a new take on classic Shakespeare story of this Macbeth, right? Hamlet.
I've seen a couple other films that Daisy's done, and I don't see a lot of range in what she has done. It always has a very Rey-esque feel. Whereas Chloe, I feel like you get different characters from her and different reactions, subtle things like body tics or, facial movements and just general body language, like as far as building a character. And I don't know. I just love her. I think she's adorable.
I think she's fantastic. But I also think that she plays very modern. I don't think that it's an accident that almost all of her films have been very contemporary stuff, whether it was Kick-Ass or Neighbors 2. She very much, or Carrie, she feels very much like a modern day teenager. Whereas since we are making this film where it does still exist in 1950, even though it's coming out in 2020, I think that Daisy has not only kind of a timeless feel to her, but she very much can fit so easily into sort of a classic film. Daisy, not only her acting style, but her look, she could have very easily stepped out of an old black and white film, where for me, Chloe is a much more contemporary actress.
I agree. But we also have to look at the role of Betty. Back in those days, there weren't female writers. There were secretaries answering the phone, if anything. And I think because Betty is, helping out Joan, she is a stronger character. I think a little more modern works for that character because of the fact that she is a little out of time. You really didn't see women till like 20, 30 years later regularly in these situations, even though it's rare, but
Okay. This was a really good debate. Great job, Ann and Hunter. I love these arguments. I love these are two really good choices, and both of your arguments are so good because you two just kept going back and forth explaining why she's not the right choice and why this one's the right choice, and you both counted each other perfectly. Because both these actresses are pretty well known. Daisy, of course, she was in Star Wars. She's very well known for just being in Star Wars, and Grace Moretz has been in a lot of stuff as well that people recognize her from, and they both have their pros and cons. They both have their strengths, weaknesses. It's a tough one. I think I'm going to go with Anne's choice for Daisy Ridley. I just think Daisy Ridley has that look because wait, who's was
That
it
was Hunter.
Hunter, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And it was Chloe Grace Moretz. Hunter's, yeah. I'm gonna go with Hunter's choice for Daisy Ridley. Sorry about that. Because Chloe Grace Moretz does have that cherub, innocent, stylish look to her. It's just that I think Daisy Ridley kind of has that too. She does kind of have that innocence to her as well, but at the same time, she has that maturity side to her as well. So if you could pair her up with a character like Joe, I think no matter who you choose for Joe, I think it's gonna work better than if you chose with Chloe. So I'm gonna go with Daisy Ridley. Danny, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here. You know, they're both good choices, but I'm gonna go with Daisy Ridley as well. I think you just brought up some really good points about the age thing. Like, and I know Chloe Grace Moretz is probably like a peer. Toward
Like 3 years apart.
yeah, but no,
I like 7.
Grace is like probably my peer. Like, but like part of like rewatching it, part of the backstory of the character is she's someone who grew up in Hollywood. She grew up and was supposed to be an actress, but then they didn't like her nose, so she got it fixed, and they didn't like her acting. Very funny bit. But I don't know. I see that more fitting for Daisy Ridley in a weird way, because she does seem like she's a bit older, and maybe that's because we grew up with well, not grew up, but like Chloe Grace Moretz has been around and have been around since she was a kid, and she still seems just young enough. Like, she still seems early 20s, where it feels like, yeah, this person is someone who's worked at a studio for a while and going into 30s. And then I just think another point you brought up was the look. Like, Daisy Ridley does just have this different look. Like, she's, gorgeous, beautiful woman. But yeah, Chloe Grace Moretz is very modern, very kind of starlet-y. And I don't know, I just think Daisy Ridley is the choice. So.
All right. How about you, Jeremy?
Thank you for asking me. Great, really tough, and like perfect choices. I mean, the right choice was Tiana, the animated character from Princess and the Frog. But
oh, I'm sorry, that was my first choice, but
yeah.
I almost went with her.
Cartoon characters were yeah. I would have picked Anastasia, actually.
It would have been fair, because then there'd be no debate. So I really loved both them, and at first I was like, Chloe Grace Moretz, yeah, but then I love what Hunter had to say, and then when Anne, you brought up, I don't want to see, I don't want to like see Ray, but then Hunter's argument was, I think he was right, where like I would probably notice Chloe Grace Moretz more than I'd notice Daisy Ridley.
Because Daisy Ridley's a wet blanket.
No, she's wonderful. She's a warm blanket. She's a just out of the dryer blanket.
Your Honor, I move.
I'm going with Daisy Ridley.
Your Honor, I move that Anne's last comment be stricken from the record.
So, Jeremy, you're choosing Daisy Ridley?
Yeah. Sorry, Jess, that you don't get to. Because we all said Daisy.
Yeah. Well, the choice is obvious with Daisy Ridley with the most votes. But Jessica, I still want to hear your opinions.
Yes, Jeremy. This was hard because they both were very good choices in and of themselves. Can you guys hear me?
Just barely.
Hold on. It's because something happened with the mic. I'm very sorry. I don't know how that swapped. There
Some musical entertainment while we wait. Okay.
Sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, a little. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sorry. It was hard because they were very good choices. I could see either of them portraying this role. I do have to kind of agree with Hunter's point, though, that I do think that Chloe might be a little bit more recognizable. Also with her, she is a very strong actress, and she portrays strong characters really well, but it's to the point that I feel like
her strength might overpower whoever that she's next to. Whereas with Daisy, I feel like she has a little bit more of a quiet strength that I think that she can work a little bit better with a co-star and have it be believable. And I can also just kind of see Daisy sitting in this time frame better. So my choice was going to be Hunter's Daisy Ridley as well.
All right. So we got our first casting. We got Daisy Ridley as Betty Schaefer. All right. Good first round. Let's move on to our next round, shall we? And our next round will be casting the role of Max, Norma Desmond's butler. Of course, spoilers warning, if you haven't seen Sunset Boulevard, is revealed that Max is actually one of the first directors that Norma has worked with and was her first husband. So, and he's one that's always been there for Norma, always been her main companion until Joe arrived into her life. So let's go ahead and cast the role of Max. Hunter, who's your choice for Max?
Thank you, Curtis. For me, in looking at the role of Max, I went with an actor who also has a lot of experience behind the camera as a director, even more so, Mr. Werner Herzog. I think Max has a bit of mysteriousness and implied malevolence to him, although we learn later his backstory that, just from his very presence, Mr. Herzog brings. So that's going to be my choice for Max von Mayerly.
How about you, Anne?
Well, I think it's first off, it should be said, I want to see out of this movie a very kind of a satirical, more of a satirical, slightly comedic mystery kind of thing. And, I think my choice for Max is Christoph Waltz. He may be a little young, but, there's makeup. We can age that stuff up. But I think he brings such a nuance to a performance, and he's really good at those, dual personality characters, where there's, because Max, when you first meet him, he's very, very gruff and very quiet, but you're a little scared of him. And I think something that is Christoph's strength, is almost making you uncomfortable in certain roles. And that's what I just love about him. And I think he could definitely pull it off. And, if we did it my way, there'd be a little comedy, because this is a very meta film. And, a film being made today, back in the 1950s, I think we have to recognize and reflect that overacting that we mentioned in the beginning, or that I mentioned in the beginning.
All right, Hunter and Ann, debate it, your choices.
All right, I'll kick this one off. So we definitely, I think, agree that Max has this sort of scary quality to him, at least early on. He's this mysterious butler figure, and it's only later that we see this sort of softer side to him. And I would say that while he's played some memorable villains, Christoph Waltz doesn't necessarily strike me as scary and intimidating. In fact, his most memorable villain role in playing a Nazi was kind of memorable in that he made a Nazi likable. And when you make that happen, you are kind of taking the teeth out of a malevolent character. Other than that, out of his bigger villain roles, we've seen him in The Green Hornet and later in James Bond. And I'd have to say, me personally, and I think critics agree with me as well, that he doesn't actually stand as strong in the villainous roles as we usually would expect him to, based on his first big breakout role. Whereas Werner, even in, again, another actor that's done Star Wars, but at this point who hasn't, just hearing him say, "I want to see the baby," or describe a man living out with grizzly bears, or the nature of life itself, just anything coming out of this man's mouth is deeply terrifying, often used even to comedic effect, like we've seen in Parks and Recreation and other parts that he's done as well. So even in a more comedic version, I think Werner would slide right into that role.
And do you have anything to rebuttal that?
No, I just kind of, like I stick with my choice because I think we're both saying same things about each of our picks. So,
Okay.
I have a very strong vision of this film, and I mean, it just depends on the goal that you want. Because I think Werner Herzog is fantastic. It just depends on the look overall of the film that you're looking for.
Okay. All right. So, these are, I'll say these are two very good actors. And I love both of your explanation of Werner Herzog and Christoph Waltz. Let's see. I'm gonna need a little bit more time to think, but Jessica, do you have any thoughts?
I know Hunter asked to see the baby.
There it is. I want to see the baby. It is a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's hard because these are very great actors, and I feel like both of them could definitely fulfill the role, and it would be like either choice would be great. But due to the purposes of how the format of this is meant to be, I have to go with who I believe had the better argument for theirs. So I have to go with Hunter's Werner Herzog.
Yeah, I'm not much of a debater, so it's fine.
No, it's fine.
I hate debating things. So.
I think I'm going to have but you know what? Look, just thinking about it, Werner Herzog is great. I just think he might be maybe a little too obvious for the role. I don't know, but and maybe might be a little bit up there in age to still work as a butler. I don't know the world of butlers and how old they work.
Ageist.
But you know,
Yeah, tell that to Michael Gough.
I did. Well, yeah, Michael Gough was pretty old in the Batman movies. True, okay. But
he played Alfred in the 90s.
I think age. You know, Werner Herzog looks intimidating for sure, but I just think kind of lowers that down a bit. Christoph Waltz. I mean, all you have to. I mean, he doesn't play villains that much. He doesn't play intimidating people that much. But all you have to see is that first scene in *Glorious Bastards*, and you're immediately terrified of him. And I just think I think Christoph Waltz is able to bring that mysterious side to him. So I'm going to go with Christoph Waltz on this. So got 1 point for Werner Herzog, 1 point for Christoph Waltz. Danny, what do you think?
Danny, I love your picture, by the way, when you go off. Like, it's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Danny, I like your picture better when you come back.
Okay. Both of you need to stop trying to butter me up for my vote. Okay? Like this is foul play, and I'll have to vote for Jack's choice just by default.
Danny, what's your address? I'll send you a fruit basket.
Anyway, it's really tough because I like both of these choices. Just so we can move along, I'm going to go with Werner Herzog, partly just because of the filmmaker angle. And just as much as I love Christoph Waltz, part of what I like about him is the silver tongue aspect to him. And Max is such a quiet character. So, like, we'd be robbing that from Christoph Waltz, which, you know, might be interesting, might be different. But I like the the fact that we're casting a filmmaker. I think that was one of the interesting things about the original casting. So, let's go, Werner.
Okay, so we got 2 for Werner and 1 for Christoph. So Jeremy, what do you think?
Another two amazing, really difficult to choose, but Eeyore was the correct answer. So the Eeyore would have been the best. I really loved Hunter's argument, and it would make sense to have a director who also acts as the role, and also like his, he's subtle and intimidating, and I really wanted to, but then I kind of thought Christoph Waltz. I mean, like the character Max, I think he's so intimidating in the beginning and towards Joe because he still loves and cares for, at least in my opinion, for Norma. And I think Christoph Waltz would do a better job at having the intimidation come from caring for her. And even though in the beginning I kind of pictured Christoph Waltz stealing the show, I think I would actually prefer seeing him in this kind of like more subtle. So, thanks for the fruit basket, Anne. Go with Christoph Waltz.
All right, so
I knew it.
Got 2 for Werner and 2 for Christoph. Jack, if you're here right now, you'll get to debate next round. But since could you be our tiebreaker from what you heard so far?
Okay.
Jack, you have a lovely forehead.
I'm here. Sorry. I just plugged in my phone. Whew. It is so hot.
All right, so Jack, could you be our
So
tiebreaker?
you guys have been Betty Schaefer and Max so far?
Yeah, we're still deciding on Max.
Okay. Did you want me to talk about my pick or?
No, we're going to decide between Anne and Jeremy's.
Great.
So from what you heard, who you got? I mean, Anne and Hunter's. Who do you got? Werner Herzog or
Yes.
Christoph Waltz?
Between those two, I would go with Hunter's choice because the character of Max, when I think casting, I think of the character. And I mean, I thought my guy, Volker Schlondorf, the German filmmaker, would have been very appropriate. But Hunter also picked another great German filmmaker, and that's who Max is. So, yeah, that's I'm in agreement with Hunter.
All right, so we got Werner Herzog as Max. So let's move on to our next round, which is the main character of the film, Joe Gillis, who of course is the painless, struggling writer of the film, desperate looking for work. He is played by William Holden in the movie, comes across Norma Desmond and is kind of forced by Norma to write a script for her for another picture that she gets pitched to the studio for her to star in, make her huge comeback. Even though in the film she says she hates the word, it's more like she was still here, but people just don't really notice her. At least she thinks people still notices her. She's kind of delusioned that way. But let's get back to Joe. So let's start casting Joe. Jack, since you're here again, who's your pick for Joe?
My pick for Joe was Ryan Gosling. I think of the character of Joe Gillis as kind of this everyman. On the one hand, he is kind of an everyman, kind of a soulful guy, a writer guy, but he also has to have a leading man quality. He has to be charismatic and hunky enough to attract this fallen star and to become the object of her affections. And I think Ryan Gosling has that kind of quality of being kind of a soulful everyman, and he can also be a hunk. So that's kind of why I thought he was pretty appropriate.
Okay, Anne, who's your choice for Joe?
Again, I kind of want to see a more tongue-in-cheek version of this film, while still casting somebody that's marketable, the audiences will go see. And to me, his character is a little, and I hate using a Friends reference, but his character's a little bit of a Chandler Bing. He's just kind of schlumpy, a little oversized suits or whatever. I would really love to see Paul Rudd in this role. I don't know has anyone here seen The Catcher Was a Spy?
No, I don't think I haven't.
It is an excellent, excellent film, and it's 100% serious, and it's Paul Rudd. He's also got that show I've not watched. It was on HBO or Netflix. But I mean, he has like he can be as serious. I mean, I know we all love him as this lovable goofball, but he can be as serious and straight as a nail. And he has got like this amazing quality that I think he would be able to roll off this role perfectly, and just really capture the essence of that character. Because I really feel a lot of that struggling, kind of just like trying to get to the bottom of this. Like it's kind of, like I said before, it kind of feels like more of a detective novel kind of thing. And he's just kind of thrown into this. I feel like he could handle that very well and be a great like vehicle for people to like, I'm gonna go see that new Paul Rudd movie. Yeah.
All right. Hunter.
Also, that picture he posted recently, Thirst. That's what I want him to look like.
Yes, I just did that new picture. That was pretty good. Hunter, who's your choice?
Okay, I gotta go with the up and coming. He's been a star on the rise for a few years now, Mr. Lakeith Stanfield. When I think of Joe Gillis, I think not just of a everyman type. I mean, he is a guy down on his luck, especially in the beginning. And I think that Lakeith really brings out a sympathy in each of his roles where you very easily empathize and attach yourself to him and his plight. And I think that in particular was the first thing that made him jump out to me. I'll get in more as we debate. But yeah, Lakeith Stanfield is my Joe Gillis.
Okay. Why don't you three debate out your choices?
I had to Google who Lakeith Stanfield is. I'm sure he's a great actor, and I just looked at what
I
he's
did
done.
too. Same thing.
I just, I feel like this character really needs somebody more, because I actually did write Ryan Gosling down and crossed him right out because I felt like he was too pretty for the role. Sorry.
I'm going to agree with Anne there, Jack, if I can, because, yeah, I mean, when you say you want an everyman and then you say Ryan Gosling, I think you and I have very different definitions of everyman. Ryan Gosling
Go ahead.
Who is also a hug, yeah. But he's literally like cast very often in things like Crazy Stupid Love or La La Land and so on as a guy who is too hot to even be real, And I think that Gosling, just on that very physical point, is he stands out like he is a movie star. He is no writer.
Well, I mean, if that's the argument that he's too much of a star and too much of a hunk, I mean, William Holden absolutely was those things at the time that he made Sunset Boulevard. So, I mean, I think you need a hunk who could play an everyman. And that's what I think Ryan Gosling is. He's a hunk who can play or come off as an everyman.
But I'll take it even further with my point on Joe, where I don't even see him as the everyman. I mean, this is a guy who had success in Hollywood as a screenwriter, but when we see him at the beginning of the story, he's in deep with loan sharks. His career is on the downturn. The guy, he's not so much the everyman as what one of my favorite writing professors used to say, he's the loser dreamer with a quest. He's a guy who's really down on his luck. And I think that Lakeith, if you, in particular, you see him in roles like Sorry to Bother You, Uncut Gems, The Photograph, even at his role in Atlanta, which is a much more comedic performance, he brings out not just this soulfulness, but this deep drive where you feel like he's a guy going against the system, and he's got the talent, he's just lacking something, whether that's drive or opportunity. And I think that's Joe Gillis, which is why when the young lady, Betty Schaefer, comes into his life, she really kickstarts him again.
I also think, a really big consideration too is if you are a studio and you want to make money, this is your number 2 on the billboard. Who's going to bring in more money? All the things that Lakeith has been in are very, very prominent. I just haven't seen a lot of them or just noted that's his name. But somebody like a Paul Rudd, or I mean even Ryan Gosling, though that's not like my choice. You have a huge audience, huge audience that's gonna go see that. That's gonna pay the God knows what the heck movies are gonna cost when we come out of this. I know they're like might be 50, but who knows? Maybe feature films. And again, too, is this a feature film? Is this a Netflix thing? Because it's two very different audiences that behave very differently. So I think that's a huge consideration on where this film is going to be outlet, which is a very relevant question these days in the business. How are we doing it?
I don't disagree. Go ahead, Jack. Take it
well,
away.
no, I agree with Anne that the top two characters, especially for a film like this, I mean, it's a masterpiece to begin with. If you are going to remake it, you need to make it with top quality people or top known people. Not necessarily, not that your choice isn't top quality, but you do need names, established names.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. What I will disagree is that Lakeith isn't a name. He's simply a rising star, where I think both of your picks are kind of the safe leading man, because they have been the leading man for over a decade now. And Paul Rudd in particular is the kind of actor that when it's him up there, it's not Joe Gillis, it is Paul Rudd. I got to borrow your own argument from earlier, Anne, and say that when it is Paul Rudd up there, whether he's Ant-Man or in a more comedic role, he basically brings the same Paul Ruddism to each of his roles. And
you've got to see the more serious work that he's done. He's amazing. The Catcher, like I said, The Catcher Was a Spy is one of my favorite movies from the last few years.
And Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers is one of my favorites of his. But, I think that, too, there's a point to where Paul's time is done. I know the joke is that he is ageless, but I think we also have to take into consideration that there is a love story in the middle of this film. And if Joe is closer in age to Norma than he is to Betty, a lot of the conflict in the movie kind of loses its edge. Whereas with someone like Lakeith, we see him as this up-and-comer who has just hit a bad streak as of late.
I mean, I see what Lakeith is doing on projects he has coming out. I think if we're making this movie right now, I would go with my choice. Maybe I would change my mind a year or two after Judas and the Black Messiah comes out, and maybe a couple other things. I think maybe he could be that vehicle. I just don't think right now for a major Hollywood picture that is a reflection of Hollywood itself.
And going back to character, the character of Joe, as you said, Hunter, is not supposed to be an up-and-comer or a rising star. He's supposed to be someone maybe a little past his prime even, who needs a resurgence and needs some kind of hot job to get him back in the big leagues. Sure. So I think someone of about Ryan Gosling's age and level of fame is a pretty good match.
Yeah, I would say, and on that point, I think Lakeith and Ryan are both kind of ticking that box. They're both within about 10 years of each other. I think that you want someone that feels like they have had experience in the business, and like say has been working about the last 10 years and is now hitting a rough patch, and not someone who feels like they are well into their prime. And I think that particular critique is in more at Paul Rudd. I would say, in that Venn diagram, I would see where Lakeith and Ryan hit the same. But my biggest hit, I think, against Ryan is the down on his luck aspect of Joe Gillis, where Ryan Gosling is the opposite of down on his luck. Again, the guy is usually typecast as, God's gift, and he really is. Thank you, Lord.
I mean, no, in La La Land, he's this struggling pianist. So, I mean, I have to disagree with that. I don't see him as like a Clooney type who's
That's
you know.
true, but I think it's because he's bad at jazz and not so much that he's not a charismatic leading man. Which is, like Ryan Gosling strikes me as the guy that could easily talk his way out of trouble, whereas Lakeith in a lot of his roles, whether it's Sorry to Bother You, Uncut Gems, and so many others, he very naturally plays a very realistic person, which Joe, I think, is, especially when you put him up against the bigger performance of, what we're going to get out of a Norma Desmond, is that he plays this more like down to earth and more struggling, sort of the way that I am currently in this moment, struggling to find the words and talk my way out of it. You really see Joe, I think, more relatable in that everyman style. And that's sort of, I mean, I hate the term, but the term of like mumblecore, like Lakeith really fits in that style of acting. And I think that he would bring a very naturalistic approach to it. And as far as, the marketability, I think that Annie brought up an interesting point there, but he is definitely a star on the rise who's been in so many things. And I would have to say that the remake of Sunset Boulevard, or in this case, if we're saying it's the very first Sunset Boulevard, either way, this is probably going to be the thing that makes him a star, and puts his name on the map whenever he gets the Oscar nom, because this would be the role, I think, that if you haven't heard of Lakeith Stanfield before, when you see him as Joe Gillis, then everyone's going to be talking about it.
I mean, it's hard for me to argue against a guy I had to just Google and look up. So
Okay. This is another tough one. Good choices all around. Good debate. I'm gonna start with Jessica first. Jessica, what do you think?
These were some interesting choices. For me personally, it was between Paul and Lakeith, just because I feel like with Ryan Gosling's style of acting, I worried that he would not be able to stand up against whoever's playing Norma. It's just a little too on the understated side for me. So for me, it was between Paul and Lakeith, and they're both phenomenal actors. And but I do agree with Anne's point. Like, Paul Rudd can do some serious stuff. If you haven't seen Mute with my husband, Alexander Skarsgård, Paul Rudd's in it, and you forget it's Paul Rudd. He disappears into this role, and he is the main villain of it, and he's super gross, and you hate him, and I never thought I would say that about Paul Rudd. So he does have some range on him. And I do agree with Anne's point of, with being marketable, especially for a movie such as this, where you really want to make sure you're getting people into the seats, just because in 2020, our taste in movies are a little bit different now on the grand scale. If you're looking at audience members, like, you have to be able to keep an audience's attention through a movie like this, especially not just with the length, but with the subject matter. And I feel like people would find it easier to watch a movie like this, even if it might not be their bag, with somebody like Paul Rudd attached to it. So even great choices, but mine is going to rest with Anne's choice of Paul Rudd.
Okay. This is a tough one for me because everyone has really good choices. I've got one vote for Paul Rudd so far. So much back and forth in this debate that made me change my mind throughout of who I should go with, because Hunter, I kind of hate you for choosing Lakeith Stanfield because you chose a good rubber actor for this, and I want to pick him so bad, and you made so much good arguments for him. It's just what Jack said, because remember, with the movie and script we're working with, this is not a remake. So this is not adapting the script that was already before. This is if this movie came out today, not in 1950. And using that same script, using those same ideas, using the same situations those characters are in, Jack brought up a great point that this is a character who was in his prime at once, who was not struggling at one point and had experience in the industry, but is just down on his luck all of a sudden in this time of his life. And I think with Lakeith Stanfield, I think he's as great as he is, he's a bit too young to go through that, to experience that. I think with Lakeith Stanfield, he'd be more someone who's rising up than someone who had a peak, but then is now kind of struggling. Which and I love so it's between Paul Rudd and Ryan Gosling for me. I think I'm going to have to probably go with Jack's choice for Ryan Gosling, because even though he is handsome, he does have a pretty face, doesn't on the surface he's a lot like a guy who's struggling, but this is a character who's going to have chemistry and back to forth dialogue with an actress who's going to play Norma Desmond, who's this larger than life character who's going to hog up the screen and be the focus on in every frame. You need an actor who could stand up to that. And I think Ryan Gosling has proven in his resume that he's done that with working with Steve Carell on Crazy Stupid Love, Harrison Ford in Blade Runner 2049, and also even that little scene in La La Land with J.K. Simmons. He's proven to work time and time again with experienced actors and hold his own when working off of them. So, and I looked up the difference between William Holden and Nancy Olsen, and they were only like 10 years apart. So that kind of factored in for me. And I think Ryan Gosling is 12 years Daisy Ridley senior, but I think it's probably still works. So I'm going with Ryan Gosling. Danny, how about you?
Toughest round so far. I think all three choices are excellent. Lakeith Stanfield is a rising star and has proven he can do so much already. He's young. I'm sorry, you fought really hard for him, Hunter. He's just too young. I gotta agree with Curtis. He's not a guy who's been chewed up and spit out by the business yet. He's a guy who's still he's a guy down on his luck, yes. And I think like in 10 years, he could really play the heck out of this role. But yeah, so again, I'm in Curtis. I'm in your corner. Again, also it would have been nice to get some diversity because so far we got a pretty white cast. But according to Amber Ruffin, one of Paul Rudd's parents must be black because it is not cracked. Anyway, between Paul and Ryan, and I really like the choice of Paul, but I am gonna go with Ryan because you bring up the La La Land where he is a down on his luck guy, like had this club and then lost it, and Jess brought up that he's understated. And I think that's kind of what I like, especially for this role. So much of Joe is just observing that kind of the situation he's in. And I think Ryan Gosling could play that well, while also being able to turn on the charm and go for it when he needs to flirt with Daisy Ridley. So Gosling.
How about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think, another three great choices. You guys probably are thinking Kermit the Frog's the obvious perfect choice for this. It's actually not true. The perfect choice for this, you guys didn't get it. It was an avocado with the face of a lion and the voice of Kermit the Frog.
Casting the Muppets. So Miss Piggy and we're not casting the Muppets for everything.
We casted them.
I think the Muppet Show did a take on Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah, just wait till we get to Norma because Miss Piggy is definitely my pick.
Yeah.
She was already cast. I didn't want to recast her because I think she was cast in X-Men or something.
I want the Swedish Chef to play everything.
I love the choices. I think Jack was right. Ryan Gosling is a hunky man, but I don't really see Joe as a hunky man, so I can't. I see him more of a Paul Rudd or Lakeith Stanfield, where he's more like, he doesn't have like the hunky look, but he's got like the same attitude. And And I know this is, me choosing who I want gives it to the other person. I was going to go with Lakeith Stanfield because, for the reason you guys you say that he's a rising star, I think that he is a star, actually. That's why I would go with him, because I think he's already there. He's already, done small roles, like Get Out, which wasn't really that small, but Short Term 12, if you guys watched that, that was amazing. And then he starred in Sorry to Bother You in The Photograph, and I think from watching The Photograph, it was, he can be put in a situation that he doesn't necessarily want to be in, but he still can crack a joke in it, and with the same subtlety I would like to see in a Joe Gillis. While Paul Rudd, his comedy would be less subtle, I think, for what I would like to see.
All right. So our choice is Stanfield.
Lakeith.
All right. So it's 2 for Gosling, 1 for Rudd, and 1 for Stanfield. So the vote is going to go to Ryan Gosling as Joe. So all around, this was a good round so far. All right, now, next round, we are going to go and cast, say, the main star of the film. And that is Norma Desmond, who was played wonderfully by Gloria Swanson in the original film. And, this is a lady who believes that she's still big, but just the pictures just got smaller. This is a larger than life character. We need someone who could chew up the screen and be the focus on every frame in this film. She's both a fantastical character yet a tragic character. So you'll probably need someone like an icon to play this. So I'm going to start off with Anne. Who's your choice for Norma Desmond? Muted.
I am muted. Remind me, how many Oscars does Meryl Streep have again? She's got a closet full of nominations. She's got awards everywhere. No one says icon. No one says she's not a diva, but no one could have the potential to be a diva like Queen Meryl.
Okay.
She's the role. I honestly could not see anybody else doing that has that presence, with the ability to be serious yet have those moments of levity and just kind of being crazy. So.
All right, Hunter, who's your choice?
Well, I went with another iconic actress, a peer of Meryl Streep. I agree, there's not many people that can stand next to her, but I would have to say Miss Susan Sarandon would give her a run for her money as far as talent, range, and just pure acting ability, as well as the history to back up a role like Norma Desmond.
And Jack.
Alrighty, so I went with a icon and a diva, EGOT winner, Liza Minnelli. Meryl Streep has said the greatest acting lesson of her life was seeing Liza Minnelli on Broadway. Liza Minnelli, like Norma Desmond, was an enormous star of her time. She is a child of classic Hollywood, and yet she has somewhat faded away. And just as Gloria Swanson had when she came back and played the larger-than-life character of Norma Desmond. And Liza Minnelli has the theatricality and the style that the character requires and that the star quality that the character requires. I think she would be perfect as Norma Desmond.
All right, 3, debate your choices.
I don't think Liza Minnelli has the box office power. I don't even think if I saw a movie on Netflix starring Liza Minnelli, I would mock it and then move on. Because it's just... She's a joke. People make fun of her. I'm sure she's wonderful. She's great, Broadway, all of that. But I feel like, things with whenever I see Liza Minnelli, I see a Saturday Night Live sketch in my head.
You know,
Well,
that's a funny position, Anne, if I may, Jack, to call Liza Minnelli a joke, because I would call Meryl a meme. First off,
Oh, it's a great meme.
you can't put nominations in a closet. Meryl is a highly acclaimed actress, but Norma Desmond is a forgotten actress. She is
yes.
someone who was great in her time, and today is not revered for the great talent that she is. Meryl just keeps going up and up on her climb, and I think that we're all three. My position in putting up Susan Sarandon, when I first thought of her, of course, I like both of you, because I've got to just say we've all three got great picks for this, are all pretty much slam dunks, and I thought of actors playing actors, and of course one of the more recent, more acclaimed roles of that was Michael Keaton in Birdman. And why that stood out so much was because in a lot of ways he's very much playing himself. And I think that one thing that both Jack and my pick bring to it that Meryl doesn't is that their careers reflect Norma's a lot more, because they were on top, they were great, and then through the ageism, misogyny, whatever you want to call it, of Hollywood, and through their own personal issues, both kind of lost the spotlight. Now, the difference, I'll say, is that I think that Anne does have you a little bit there, Jack, and that Liza doesn't really has not been around for so long in the spotlight that I don't even know if she still has anymore. Whereas Susan never really went away; she just was sort of forgotten after her heyday, and until recently, of course, where she showed that she still got it whenever she played another Hollywood legend in Bette Davis with Feud.
Yeah, when I saw you put Susan Sarandon, I thought, okay, but I feel what one of the great things about Sunset Boulevard and the character of Norma Desmond, and I know we're not supposed to pretend like they ever played it, but Gloria Swanson's narrative in playing that part is that she had not made a movie in over 16 years when she played Norma Desmond. And it is one of the great performances. And in terms of Liza Minnelli being kind of a joke, I mean, that's not her. Those are people who don't respect her talent and have not looked at enough of her work to know that she is an amazing actress. She's done many movies. Yeah. She's done many movies in which she has never sung a note or danced a step. She's a great dramatic actress. And again, that's a true story that I said about Meryl Streep, saying that Liza Minnelli, seeing her on Broadway was the greatest acting lesson of her life. You can YouTube it. She's an amazing actress, and she has the theatricality and the, I don't want to say camp, but I guess for lack of a better term, the camp quality that the character of Norma Desmond undeniably has.
I think that this role requires, I mean, this is a star vehicle. This is meant for a superstar, and Liza just doesn't bring the money to the table as far as getting an audience. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't even click on this if it was, a Hulu film that I miraculously found something on Hulu, because it's horrible to navigate. But it's just somebody like Meryl Streep. We're not making a movie about somebody's actual life who's been out of the spotlight. I'm really looking at their abilities and what they can do, and Susan Sarandon is fantastic. I just don't think that the second, like in the original movie, you have that moment where she sits down on set and the guy's like, oh my gosh, and he puts the spotlight on her and everybody's like, oh, it's Norma Desmond. Like, that's the exact reaction like Meryl Streep would get if like a spotlight hit her in the middle of a dark room. Susan Sarandon, people would be like, oh, that's cool. That's Susan Sarandon. They're like, oh my God, Meryl Streep sitting right there. I think she would get the bigger, she has that grandness of character. And I don't know why, because it's a different type of movie. I just really feel like, and it's so silly and it's so not this, but like in Death Becomes Her is very much kind of like that. She's got this grandness where she's like comes to a stop of the staircase and just kind of is there. She's like, I am here. And she has those moments in different films, and it's just like she's actually always kind of screamed that to me.
I gotta agree with you that Meryl is big. I think that all three of our actresses, that's one of the big things that they share in common is they're larger than life. I do have to, because this is the second argument that you've used, the like we're putting butts in seats argument. And while Meryl might be the biggest name out of the three currently, I mean, it's not like she turned Iron Lady into one of the top 10 grossing films of the year. So we're going to look at it in like 2020 box office projections. Sunset Boulevard is not a movie that we're making to draw in purely on a profit level. It's going to make its bones on whether or not it is an award darling. And yeah, of course, Meryl is the Academy Award queen, but you know, my girl Susan's no slouch either. Nominated 4 times in her prime before finally winning in '95, as well as winning BAFTA, Screen Actors Guild, Golden Globes, and so many other awards herself. And on top of that, I've got to add the EGOT winner. That's true, Jack. But I will also say that on the theatricality point, where on going big, Susan, of course, brings that level. You know, I mean, one of her big breakout roles was the Rocky Horror Picture Show. You know, and from that point, she's had a cult following. But we've seen her. She has, I think, what Susan has that the other two don't have as much is a level of range, where Susan not only is big and larger than life, she can be small and you can feel her pain and that she's losing out on things because again, there is that moment, Anne, where the light hits Norma and they're like, that's Norma Desmond, but that is immediately followed up by the light going away from her and Cecil B. DeMille ushering her off the set and placating her because he does not want to give her the time of day. And that is not something I see a legend like Meryl Streep or Liza Minnelli getting. Whereas someone like Susan, I think, puts forward someone with the talent who just simply never got that star quality, or at least couldn't hold on to the star quality in the same way that those other two did.
I think we also have to consider the rest of what we've already cast. We've cast 3 people who are not necessarily leaders of film. In it themselves, you're not going to get huge audiences. I mean, you'll have the Star Wars fans or the guys that are like, oh, Daisy Ridley's so hot, I'm going to go see her. You, at this point, if you're making a film, like you need a star in this film. And you know, Susan Sarandon, yes, if we're doing life imitating art kind of thing, then maybe Susan Sarandon's the right choice. But if you're making a film,
well, if we're doing life imitating art, I think Liza is by far the biggest candidate because again, she is a child of Hollywood. She grew up on these sets that are portrayed in this movie.
We're not making Mommy Dearest, Jack.
No, I know, but I mean,
do you love me, Mama? Do you love me now?
My point is, the character of Norma Desmond is supposed to be this person who is just engulfed in classic era Hollywood. And Liza Minnelli was engulfed in classic movie Hollywood. She's a child of it. And yet, she's an amazing performer in her own right. And she hasn't done anything in some time. As Gloria Swanson hadn't when she played Norma Desmond, and as the character of Norma Desmond hasn't. Norma Desmond is supposed to be this once amazing talent who is so caught up in fame and her own world that she's kind of distanced from reality. And I mean, I adore Liza, and that's kind of where she's at. And I feel like a vehicle like this would be something for her to channel who she is and what she can do. I think it's perfect casting, I think.
I got a comment on both of your points there. And again, I mean, you're talking about star quality. Gosling is the name now on the top of the marquee. So, you know, I mean, he's selling the thing again, if that is your concern. I don't necessarily, as I said, agree with you that that's got to be our number one concern on casting this particular film. Maybe if it was, you know, a bigger budget sort of thing. And, yeah, I mean, again, I think all 3 of them share not only the life experience, but the larger-than-life aspect. But I think that we're all forgetting one major part of the Norma Desmond character, and that is she is the antagonist of the film. She is, for lack of a better term, she is the villain. And as scary as Max needs to be, by the end, we need to be a little afraid of Norma. And I gotta say, looking at her filmography, whether it's from Witches of Eastwick to Enchanted, and so many other films in between, Susan Sarandon not only can play the larger-than-life, big-time Hollywood actress, as we saw her do very recently in Feud, but she can also be very scary and very intimidating in a way that I think that the joke and the meme that we have with Liza and Meryl we don't necessarily get. And I will also say that I think we will see Susan as Norma Desmond, whereas both of your picks sort of stick out so far that we're not necessarily going to see Norma on screen. We'll be seeing Meryl and the legend, and we'll be seeing Liza the legend.
I have to respond to that, and also to another point you said where Susan is capable of going smaller and going more human. Again, if you watch more of Liza's work, especially her early stuff, she is capable of being very human and very small. There's a wonderful movie called The Sterile Cuckoo, for which she got her first Oscar nomination, in which she plays this manic depressive 19-year-old college student who goes through all of these emotions and is so desperate for love from this guy that she has her college romance with. I mean, she's totally capable of being human and of being vulnerable. So that's just what I counter those 2 points with, is that when you look at her body of work, yes, Liza is known for being a diva and for being a camp icon, and she is, and I love her for it, but she is also capable of being very human.
All right. Man, this is a good round. I think I got my choices. I think I'm gonna have to swallow my head a little bit. So let's start off with Jessica. What's your thoughts?
This is hard because, again, this is another one that all three of the choices I feel like could play the role and play it in a realistic manner, or even over the top manner, obviously, as we know from Norma. Everybody brought really good points to the table. I'll start off with Anne's choice of Meryl. Obviously, she is one of the greats. Like, not many can hold a candle to her performance. My concern would be this almost feels like a project that she's kind of already done with Death Becomes Her. And I feel like, having to portray a washed up actress trying to reclaim her youth or her fame again might be a been there, done that kind of situation for her. That I don't even know if she would accept the project. I feel like she would want something that would be kind of like a new challenge to her. She also might be too big of a name where it would be hard to focus on anybody else as Meryl is in the movie as an over-the-top character and as present on screen as Norma is. So for me, it was between Susan and Liza. And honestly, I was leaning more towards Susan, especially thinking back on her performance in Feud as Betty Davis and how she can do those over-the-top moments and be subtle when she needs to. But Jack really sold me on his argument, especially with bringing up the fact that Liza is one of those greats that has inspired other fantastic actresses. And especially since it feels kind of like Liza has kind of lived this a little bit, where she was a really big star, kind of fell from grace, trying to get back into the public eye, a very Gloria Swanson type of road. So Jack, I'm going to go with his choice as Liza, sold by his argument.
Yeah, I love all three of these choices. I think all of you made really strong, solid arguments on all three of them. One way I was leaning toward Meryl Streep because, I think this is a role that she could do in her sleep. Honestly, I mean, if this movie was being remade or done tomorrow, and they said Meryl Streep was gonna play Norma Desmond, I just heard the announcement and she already killed it. She already killed the performance, and no doubt Susan Sarandon couldn't do as good of a job playing Norma Desmond. But when Jack chose Liza Minnelli, I thought that was first kind of an odd choice. I mean, no one really has seen her around for years. She does have a history in Hollywood. She came from Hollywood royalty, obviously, but she's just not in the public eye, in the public zeitgeist at the moment. But just thinking about this movie, especially with the plot of what it's about, and it was being released today, and all of a sudden getting news that there's a new movie coming out with hot star. I mean, you got Werner Herzog in there, but you got hot today's stars like Daisy Ridley and Ryan Gosling, but then you got Eliza Minnelli. I think that would probably grab some attention because it's like she's making a return on the screen. She's coming back. We're going to see her. We haven't seen her for years, and the parallels that situation has with this story, I think it would grab so much attention, and it would it would attract so many people, and especially a lot of cinephiles. And I think it's this is like a role that she could play. So my choice is going to go with Jax for Liza Minnelli. Danny?
Want to bring up two things. One, I'm surprised no one went with Glenn Close. I mean, I guess she played it on Broadway twice, won a Tony. Just want to point that out.
She's going to do the musical, Danny. She's going to do the musical.
Okay, I'm just pointing it out. She could do it too. Another interesting thing was just everyone, all three of you went with people between the age of 70 and 75. Like they're all like a year or two apart. When the character is 50, and the character was played by, and Gloria Swanson was 50 at the time. So I'm just curious. So it just got me down a rabbit hole of, oh, who's the like 50? I thought like Michelle Pfeiffer, Renee Russo. Is that maybe who are both in their 60s? But I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up before I decide the obvious answer. It's Liza. Jack, you just killed it with the argument. You bring the meta context to it. It's so fascinating. She is someone who hasn't done really, like, she's appeared, but like I think probably the last time she was in a movie that played in theaters, maybe it was like she had a cameo in Sex and the City too. So like you've got that, you've got the Hollywood, you've got all the stuff you mentioned, and like just to bring up some points you guys brought up, you talked about the scene being at where the whole film shoot stops because you put the light on her. I see Liza in that kind of scene very more than the other two, just as someone, it's like everyone's going to be reverent for a minute, but because she's a joke, things that you brought up, and because she does kind of have this history of being a bit of a joke now, it is very easy to shoo off when they turn the lights off. And honey, you talked about her being scary. You talked about who can be scary. Yes, Norma Desmond is kind of a scary character, but what's scary about her is how unhinged she is. And like, I think Liza could really play into that because she's had such a tough personal life. So yeah, it's far and away Liza, as great as the other two are. It's Liza.
Okay, I think the vote is obvious. Got three votes, best out of four for Liza Minnelli. But before we get to the next round, Jeremy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, all four Golden Girls just morphed into one mega Golden Girl. Was I think the real choice. That or Sam Elliott. I don't know. But yeah, I chose Liza Minnelli before the debate, because I thought she was perfect, and then I was waiting for hopefully the rebuttals might change my mind. I think that Liza Minnelli being a joke to some people helps her case because Norma Desmond is a joke. Like, people treat her as a joke. Her coming back into the limelight would be perfect. And then Susan Sarandon as the villain in Enchanted. Wow. I mean, that was a great argument. But then Jack's passion and knowledge of, Liza Minnelli took it home. So, Liza Minnelli, or a mega Golden Girls, or Sam Elliott.
I would see that. I would definitely see Sam Elliott as Norma Desmond. I'm still very rich. Pictures are all small. I can see that. All right, so we got Liza Minnelli for Norma Desmond. All right, let's move on to our next round. In order for this film to succeed, we need a talented director to help tell this story, to help bring it to life. So there are many directors out there, but we have a choice of 3 options, and our debaters are going to provide us with those options right now. So, Hunter, who's your choice for director?
All right. So for my director, I think what this film needs is a more sympathetic look at Norma and her story and her plight, as well as the up-and-coming adversity that the character Betty Schaefer is playing. And for me, that's got to come from the genius Greta Gerwig, who has shown both of those aspects very recently in her writing and directing for Little Women.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Greta Gerwig was the pick. The last thing I said was, she showed off that she can play she can portray the sympathy and kind of the world weariness that Norma has gone through, as well as the plucky, optimistic, ready to take on the world aspect that Betty really brings to the story. I think that both of those were showcased in Little Women. So Greta Gerwig, she's my director.
Okay, Greta Gerwig. I don't know where Jack went. Maybe he went back. So until Jack comes back, then Anne, who's your choice for director?
I mean, I did pick Ryan Johnson, but with this movie we've cast, I just don't think it's a good fit. So I'm just gonna bow out gracefully of this round because it's just
no.
I mean, it's with Liza Minnelli and this random cast that we have. Like, it's just, for me, the tough part is what vision are we making this movie? Are we making it exactly as it is? Like, it's hard for me to cast anything when it doesn't, without a creative direction. So I had a thing in mind, and Ryan Johnson is just, I wanted a quirkier, more tongue-in-cheek version of this movie, and you guys have kind of cast a more serious ragtag band of people that I don't think would work with my choice.
I mean, the original film itself is kind of it
would never. I mean, and I don't think the original film would ever, if they made it exactly the same way, it would not be a marketable film. You have to make some changes and make it a little bit more. Modernize it just a little bit to today's audiences, because audiences in the whenever this was made are not the same as audiences today.
1950.
Okay.
Was it 50? 1950?
1950, yeah. Okay.
Oh, there's Jack.
Okay, Jack, if you're ready, do you have your choice for director?
Can't hear you, Jack.
Can't hear you, Jack.
Can I vote for Jack's ceiling of his car to direct it?
Right.
Maybe his.
I just vote that Jack drives safely.
Yeah. We're gonna
Don't
pause for
use your phone behind the wheel.
That comes back.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, Jack, you're good. Who's your director?
Okay, Todd Haynes, the director of Carol and Far From Heaven. I think he would be a perfect choice because this would be a period piece set in 1950, and that is exactly what Todd Haynes does. And not only does he do period pieces well, but he creates the feeling of a film of that period. Far From Heaven is a take on the Douglas Sirk films of the 1950s. And I know that Todd Haynes could absolutely create that entire world that is so beautifully and masterly created by Billy Wilder in the original. Also, Todd Haynes has a great rapport with actresses. And as we've been discussing throughout this entire debate, the character of Norma Desmond is such a complex, larger-than-life character and needs to be played by a larger-than-life actress. I know that Todd Haynes would be up to the task.
All right, debaters, debate this round.
I'll start this one off because I like both. This is another one where I like both of the picks from my fellow debaters. I will start off by making my point for Greta, who not only recently did a period piece, but she herself comes to directing as an actress herself. And that was a big part of why I wanted her for the director, because I think that she is a writer, an actor, and a director. So I think that for me, putting her in that director role, she can speak to the experiences of Norma as well as Joe and Betty, more so than a lot of other filmmakers could. I, like Anne, am a big fan of Rian Johnson, so pick there. And I think he could definitely do an interesting version of this, but I think you did kind of made a point there where in your head, he would bring more of like a quirkiness to it and not necessarily that classic Hollywood style, which is definitely Jack's pitch. And I think that you're right on that Todd Haynes, that is his wheelhouse. My big hit against Todd is that for me, his films lack, I wouldn't say emotionality, but the full complexity. His films, in another word, are just sad. Whether it's Carol, Dark Waters, they sort of just hit on that one emotion, whereas this is a story that I think the reason that it is the original is a classic and why the story has lasted for so long is because it's one of those that appeals on every emotional level. It is sad, but it is also funny. It is exciting. It is a little bit sexy, and all these things in between, where for me, Todd is sort of like, I would compare him almost to like a Christopher Nolan type or something along those lines, where you get sort of a one note and it's a really good note, but he's not playing with the full orchestra as a director.
Well, I mean, I just have to disagree. I feel like Todd Haynes, he's one of my favorite working filmmakers because he does the two things that I think movies need. He prioritizes performances with his actors, and he is totally all about atmosphere. And that's why I love his movies so much, is because he creates the atmosphere in which they take place. Usually the 1950s, yes, but his attention to detail in terms of costume and set decoration, just the look of his films. And Sunset Boulevard absolutely has an atmosphere to it, and it has a look to it that is very, very vital to the movie as a whole. And also the other thing that Todd Haynes has, and Greta Gerwig has this too, is they're both writer-directors. So as was Billy Wilder, who made Sunset Boulevard. So I think they both have that in their favor as well.
Yeah, very true. That is something they share with as writer-directors. And like I said, I think that Greta brings just one extra point there by being an actress as well. So she brings that experience. You know, not only does she obviously speak the acting language, but she herself probably shares a lot of experience and maybe even anxiety. You know, for me, I feel like she would be the right choice to get in the head of Norma Desmond. And as far as atmosphere, I mean, I got to speak for Miss Gerwig as well. I mean, I think that her two big films so far, she's done 3 films so far as a director, and her 2 major ones with Lady Bird and Little Women are both, even starring some of the same actors, are so far apart in mood and tone and atmosphere because she has such range. So and especially with her last film being a period piece, I have no doubt that she would be able to transport us back to this time and make us feel like we're in the 1950s. But I think what she could do a bit better than Todd Haynes is that she could make us feel like we are in the 1950s. And by that, I mean, in the same way she did for Little Women, where she contemporizes it, and not by modernizing it, but by simply making it feel natural. It's kind of in the way that you see, it's the difference in the way some directors and actors approach Shakespeare. You know, some come at it from a bigger theatrical standpoint, you know, and neither way is right or wrong, but others come at it in a more natural standpoint. And I think, especially for a broad audience, which is what this film ideally is going for, they are going to respond better when they can follow emotionally what's going on and not feel that detachment. And that's kind of what, for me, the major difference between Todd and Greta's styles is that when I'm watching a Todd Haynes film, because don't get it wrong, man is very talented and makes some great work. I feel like I am watching it sort of detached, as if I'm looking through a window or watching it in a theatrical experience. Whereas with Greta's work, I feel like I am there and experiencing it right along with the actors and therefore the characters themselves. You know, to compare two of their more recent films that were, you know, two of my favorites. Carol, I feel like I'm watching a play. Little Women, I feel like I'm in the living room.
See, that's why I love Todd Haynes, is because you feel like you're watching, it's almost anthropological. You're seeing something going on in front of you. And that's how I think movies should be in general. And that's what I feel like Sunset Boulevard does. It feels like you're looking through the windows into this crazy theatrical Hollywood world. And that's what Todd Haynes does with his films, and what I know he could do with Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah, I think for me, it is such an emotionally driven film that I want to feel more empathy and more attachment to the characters than the detached feeling I often get from that Todd Haynes style. Yeah, Anne, do you have anything else you want to weigh in on? Cool. All right.
So I think we got our debate in. I think this was a pretty good round of the choices we got. Wow. Jeremy, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I think this movie is so well scripted that the obvious choice was a sloth and a ferret trying to figure out a Rubik's Cube on a director's chair. So really cute stuff, you know, just to help the actors, you know, whatever. But I like the arguments. I think Hunter was argument was a bit more passionate. Like, you know, and his points, and both your points are really good, but I'd rather see the movie that when you're in the living room instead of watching it from the window, which is wow, that was poetic. Greta Gerwig for every movie in 2020.
Yeah, we have better movies in 2020 if Greta Gerwig break it all.
Palm Springs 2, directed by it.
All right, so 1 point for Greta Gerwig. How about you, Jessica?
Y'all brought up some very good points, and they're very good directors in and of their own right. I do agree with Jack's point that, like, he has kind of the cushion of the resume to show that he has done movies like this before, set in this time period. But what really sold me was Hunter's argument about how Greta could make it a more emotional film, especially since the focus is on an aging, kind of fading actress and the turmoil that she goes through and how much of a loose cannon she can be. And I feel like she would be able to get more of those great emotional performances out of her actors because she knows those fears and might have been in like the shoes of somebody that felt like that. And also in 2020, I like the idea of having a female director for something like this. So it feels less like it's about a crazy woman as opposed to like a woman who has been through some stuff. And maybe it can make her a more sympathetic character to audiences. So I'm going to go with Hunter's choice of Greta.
Okay. Even though I like both these choices, I think they swing a little bit differently. I think I'm going to go with Todd Haynes. Because with Greta Gerwig, even though I think she's talented, what she did with Lady Bird and what she did with The Little Woman, I think what I got from her films is that she adds a lot of levity to her films, a lot of lightness, which isn't bad. It's her style, and she does it great. I just think Greta Gerwig wouldn't be the right fit for the type of film, even because, again, bringing this film from 1950 to now, and trying to make it as close to as it was into the original, I just don't think Greta Gerwig's style fits that. But with Todd Haynes, you know, you're right, Hunter. With Todd Haynes, it feels like you're watching the film through a window, opposed to actually being there. But that's what Sunset Boulevard kind of was. It was witnessing this tragedy. It was Joe. It was Joe telling. He's the narrator. Remember, he's the one telling you the story. So you're the one you're the one who's on the outside, not the one who's on the inside. I think that Todd Haynes would do that great, especially with something like with Dark Waters. I think you need someone who knows how to go a little dark to tell this tragic story. So my choice is going to be for Todd Haynes. How about you, Danny?
Yeah, it's Todd Haynes. Like, come on, guys. It's Todd Haynes. Oh my God. Yes. Everything you brought up, Jack, just the films he's made, his kind of anthropological approach to it. Oh my God, this is like made for him. How is this his discussion? Look, I love Greta Gerwig. I defended Lady Bird so hard in the break room. Those of you who worked at WB back then can remember probably. Against a lot of people who didn't like it because they were wrong. I love Greta Gerwig. She's a great director. And yes, Jess, awesome point. It would be great to have a woman directing this. But if not a woman, Todd Haynes, who directed one of the best movies about a lesbian romance despite being a man somehow. Oh my God, it's Todd Haynes. Hunter, I'm gonna come find you and punch you in the face. You don't only play one note? How dare you? I'm not even kidding. I'm mad. Anyway,
Danny, it is on record on video that you threatened
Hunter. I think it's clearly he was joking. I think it's clearly that Danny was joking.
I'm not. Don't. Comparing him to Nolan of all people. Nolan doesn't know an emotion if it bit him on the foot. Oh God. Oh my God. It's Todd Haynes and tiebreaker.
Okay, I think we know what Danny's choice is. What? Okay, so I think we came to a tie, two for Greta Gerwig and 2 for Todd Haynes. So and if you'd like to be our tiebreaker,
I'm gonna say Steven Spielberg. What is on Jack's camera? That looks like
I'm driving. Sorry.
It looks dirty parts. It looks like.
Oh no, it's my hand. Sorry.
I don't know, because Todd Haynes has done work like this in the past, and I think he does great work. But when I go to a movie, I don't want to just watch the movie. I want to be enveloped in the movie, and I want that emotion, and I want, I want to feel something about the movie. I don't want to just feel like I'm sitting there. This is the thing that's happening. So I'm going to go with Greta Gerwig.
All right. Well, this was a close one, but I'm sorry, Danny. I'm sorry, but the vote's in, and
you get it, Danny.
Greta, you did great.
Has no one watched Carol? I know you said it, but has no one watched?
And something I forgot to mention: Todd Haynes loves Liza Minnelli. Just saying.
Who doesn't?
What are we doing? Has no one seen Carol? Like, it's been on
Beautiful.
Pluto TV a lot recently, so I'll just catch scenes of it. Talk about emotion. Oh my God. And you feel like right there. I have no idea what that argument is even.
Well, that's how it goes.
Carol is heartbreaking.
That's how it goes.
Listen, Danny.
All right.
Oh, sorry. You got me.
All right.
Wow.
So it looks like Greta Gerwig is going to be our director for this version of Sunset Boulevard. All right. I think we got our cast and we got our director assembled. So let's go recap. Let me go off the list here. We got Daisy Ridley as Betty. We got Werner Herzog as Max. We got Ryan Gosling as Joe. We got Liza Minnelli as Norma Desmond. And we got Greta Gerwig as our director. This is a pretty stacked list. Especially, I could see all these actors in the roles, especially with Ryan Gosling as Joe Gillis. I think that's kind of a role that I think he could probably really connect to and really get into. And Daisy Ridley as Betty, I could totally see that. Werner Herzog as Max, obviously. Liza Minnelli as Norma Desmond. It seems like something that comes out of the blue, kind of a shock, kind of a surprise. But you know what? It would be a nice return for Liza Minnelli, and again with the parallels of story and her real life, it totally makes sense. With Greta Gerwig, even though it's not my personal choice, obviously not Danny's, of course, but she is a competent director, and with this type of movie, it could be really changed to her. She's used to doing movies a lot of levity with Lady Bird and with Little Women, but I think this could be a nice piece for her, and it could show audiences and cinephiles that she has range as a director. So, Hunter, what do you think about these choices?
I think all of mine were really good, and the others were okay. No, I especially so these were all. This is a tough debate because especially the last few, I would have liked to have seen my fellow debaters' choices. In fact, I mean, I would have voted for Liza Minnelli, and Todd Haynes is a perfect choice for it. But when you're debating, you gotta back, your position and destroy the other one. So yeah, I gotta say, all of these were really strong choices. The only one that for me that kind of stands out is still Ryan Gosling, and just that he almost seems he's almost too perfect, not just in life but for the role. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Meryl. It's like, oh, he could do that in his sleep. Yeah, so he would nail it, but would he be as interesting?
Okay, Jeremy, what are your thoughts on the results?
I mean, you didn't pick the perfect stuff. The sloth and the ferret and Tiana from. Anyways, on watch. I mean, I thought this was the toughest one to choose from, mostly because I knew everybody. Sometimes I don't know everybody, and that makes it harder. Sweet debating, sweet choices. Just have them all in there, and then co-directing, and then they'll switch off each scene for each actor, and then everyone's happy. So, all right.
How about you, Anne? What do you think about the results?
I mean, I wouldn't see this movie with this cast. I don't think it's marketable. Maybe other than a TV movie on the Wii network. And somehow they magically had money to get Ryan Gosling in it. I don't know. Maybe they sold someone's CDs.
Okay, all right. How about you, Jack?
If Todd Haynes was directing, this would be one of my dream movies. But I'm so glad that the two leads were my choices, because I felt pretty passionate about those. The section of the debate that I was out of was when we cast Max and Betty Schaefer, so I didn't hear anybody's arguments. But as you read those, I was like, yeah, those could work. And everybody's choices, I was like, those could work. I like mine better, but everyone's choices were good, I thought.
How about you, Jessica?
I mean, even with Ryan Gosling, who I cannot stand in the slightest as the lead, I would go see this movie.
All right. And I think we know Danny's thoughts, but yeah. Danny, would you like to say anything aside from the director, the controversial director choice?
I mean, yeah, no, sounds interesting. I'd see this movie. I like the 4 people we've got. It'll be very interesting in terms of Greta's style versus kind of having someone like Liza in the role. So, I don't know. We'll watch it. I'm gonna watch it. It's Sunset Boulevard's a great movie. Probably be good too. And I mean, Greta Gerwig can do no wrong. I'm gonna watch it.
Okay.
She's not the person who should direct it, but whatever.
So again, just running off one last time. Daisy Ridley is Betty Schaefer. Werner Herzog is Max. Ryan Gosling is Joe Gillis. Liza Minnelli as Norma Desmond, and Greta Gerwig as our director. I want to thank you all for watching this episode of Cast Feature. I'd like to thank my panel, Danny, Hunter, Jeremy, and Jessica, and Jack. I want you to all join us next time for our 7th episode when we are doing, what are we doing? We're doing Breakfast Club next week. So that's going to be a lot of fun of casting a 2020 version of that John Hughes classic. So join us next week for Breakfast Club. Thank you for watching this episode of Cast the Future with Sunset Boulevard. We'll see y'all next time. Have a great day.